Does Sonic the Hedgehog 3 offer up a new, fresh take on the character, or are we offering the same old, same old? Hey everyone, welcome to Cinema, where we focus on the films. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema. Let me know down in the comments below. Have you seen Sonic the Hedgehog 3? Was it good, was it bad, or somewhere right in the middle? Or if you're waiting for this review to decide if you're going to see it or not, make sure to like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe if you haven't already to join in the film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. So going right into the synopsis. Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles must team up once more against Shadow, who has all these powers that they never faced up before, forcing them into a relationship with an unlikely teammate that leads them in order to protect the Earth once more. Taking it right into positives, this is a film that will be great for nerds of the video games, nerds of any of the past TV shows, or if you're fans of the previous two movies. And for me, myself, who is not familiar with the video games, hasn't played much video games in quite a while, and wasn't a huge fan of the first two movies, this delivers on something fresh and new, what we're getting out of the material that we got before, recycling some of the old things that just didn't work quite as well with human subplots that are taken out of the picture, and it's a little bit more of a focused story that may not be 100% there. It's still a family fun film that's great for being for families because it's just opening up the audience to younger kids, being silly in some regards, going in ridiculous directions with certain decisions, certain things that don't always make sense, but at the same time, it delivers on something that opens up the emotions. Adding in Keanu Reeves to the cast, who plays Shadow, is just deliberately excellent to what really changes the pace of this film. It's a broken character that really revolves around this drama, this other thing that takes the film a little bit more seriously. It doesn't make silly jokes out of the trauma, things that are going on, but that also makes an impact on Sonic's character and the arc that he goes through within this film, the dealing of loss, with grief, with how our emotions all work in within us, and also just dealing with anger, how that ultimately works out with characters, comparisons to heroes and villains, how that forms us from our origins, ultimately changes the pace of how the story works as a whole. You still get the great family dynamic of Tom and how he's working with Sonic, raising Tails, Knuckles as the side characters as well. Knuckles and Tails are still somewhat side characters, but they still work authentically and effectively as teammates with Sonic, and also aiding in with where we're going with Shadow's character, and also Dr. Robotnik, as well as Gerald Robotnik, who is this new introduction to this villain that's brought into this film that becomes compelling by the nature of the story. And Jim Carrey plays both Gerald and the young Dr. Robotnik. How that all works out is just a blast, just the work of the humor that's played on with that. Jim Carrey, I enjoy him. I believe Jim Carrey's the best of the both films that we got in previously, where some things didn't work as well. Jim Carrey is still the charisma and charm that makes some of these films work effectively, and he works to the fullest extent here, ×2, because he is doubled up. There's a fourth wall break where they're self-aware with what they do with the movie, having the same actor play this different characters, putting them on screen, and there's just moments here and there throughout the film where it may even create an interruption from the flow of the story, but there's still a pause for that comedy that works effectively, even for me, who is not always into certain types of comedy, things that break the flow of the story. But this is a break that is well needed for the story, adding in some laughs, especially to combine against a mixture of this heavy drama, this trauma story that Shadow is facing. What we get out of the cast as a whole, it's great. Sonic, played by Brent Schwartz, Idris Elba playing Knuckles, and Colleen playing Tails, just all deliberately goes about their own way, being a great cast, playing their voiceovers well. And so just the charisma, the blend of the trauma, and drama moments of the film don't feel undermined by the comedy as much as we've gotten in the previous two films. That was my biggest gripes with the previous two films that I'll talk about within my ranking in the future, but overall there's just something about this film that has this charisma, this charm, that works effectively not only because of the blend of the different genres, things that flow about. It's adventurous and has great cinematography. Jeff Fowler has directed all three of these movies, and he does a great job, and he improves upon his camera work, and the CGI still manages to look better and better upon each one, and there's some extra action battles by the third half that goes about something that's really exciting for the nature of what you're just building upon. It's great. There's certain elements where it becomes cinematically aware that it's a movie, but that doesn't necessarily take away too much away from the experience. Just being able to enjoy it as a fun family film, even on your own, just having to enjoy the pacing that goes about along the way, doesn't have too much disturbances, distractions, and even when it does take those small little breaks, it feels like it's a little bit more for a purpose and not taking away from what the main focus storyline is as a whole. And so going into the mix elements, of course this is a comedy film. Not everything is going to be a hit or a miss, and for fans that are not into the Sonic video games, there may be something where, like me, I'm not understanding every single Easter egg, other things that makes fans of the movies or this TV series or even the video games that much more ecstatic to experience as a whole. There's not necessarily anything to me that really pops out because I'm not understanding the Easter eggs, but as someone that knows the base knowledge of certain lore, certain characters as a whole, there still is something that delivers effectively, that manages to teach me a little bit more about the franchise, about the video games, even if I'm not necessarily fully aware. So this is something that may be a hit or miss in some regard for fans of the video game. Maybe there's something that takes away that I'm not aware of, but ultimately there's something that really delivers, even as someone that isn't one playing the video games. But of course, that's subjective to certain people's taste, depending on if the comedy works as a whole, if you don't necessarily like the dramatic backtale, how they're taking shadow. So there's just certain quirks here and there that could just be a hit or miss as a whole. And I also like to note there's a few characters here or there that felt like they were set up to be a little bit more important, but they sort of ended up not being too much involved in the latter half of the film. They were sort of brought up again. They didn't disappear completely, but ultimately the consequence of certain things that they sort of alluded to or felt like they were foreshadowing with a build-up didn't necessarily become a bigger part because there were greater villains, other things that meant more to the film as a whole. So it's sort of up to your interpretation of what all leads on from that, what you think of the characters, the setup and delivery of all that, that ultimately could end up hitting or missing for you in certain moments here or there. To which I have to say, in the negatives, there are certain moments that, of course, there's the contrived moments, certain things you can overlook or not, depending on how much deep you are into enjoying the film or just letting things slide. And there's other things that the build-up of certain things don't always go upon this great delivery, this grand scale battle. Other things in the setup of the film where the exposition may not be too long, but there's certain things where the comedy, other things, bits and pieces here and there, just feel tedious or cringe even at times for the pull-off of certain deliveries. Sonic talking too much as he's a kid, sort of making sense of his own juvenile self in one regard. That goes about some of the comedy that I'm not into from the first two films, and that sort of blends in over here, which makes sense because he's still following along the same sort of path, his age. It sort of corrects itself more as you go deeper and deeper into the film, becomes a little bit more serious, while also still having the other jokes that do work in their own regard. But ultimately, yes, there's still the comedy bits that if you aren't a fan of them in the first two films, then it sort of bleeds over into this one, especially in the first quarter, first half of the film, just generally going throughout that. And so that's just my personal review for Sonic the Hedgehog 3, which I surprisingly have to rate a simply 7 out of 10. Let me know down in the comments below all your thoughts on Sonic the Hedgehog 3. How does it compare to the other ones? I'll be doing a ranking here on this channel soon, including the Knuckles series, so make sure to look out for that. Make sure to like this video if you enjoy it, subscribe if you haven't already to join in the film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. So that's just all, and make sure to do yourself a favor and go watch a movie.